Before we begin, a short note. We have done our very best to gather accurate information from open source reporting, court documents, and international media. If you find anything in this episode you disagree with, or if you have additional details, please contact us. We genuinely want to get these stories right. This case has no political or geopolitical agenda. It is shared for purely informative and educational purposes. On the night of December 31st, 1995, a family in the tiny village of Bratkovychi in western Ukraine gathered to celebrate the new year. By morning, they were all dead. A mother, a father, their twin daughters, shot in their own home. One of the girls was found beneath the kitchen table. She had bitten her own hand to the bone in terror. A wedding ring had been cut from the mother's finger. The house was set on fire, and the killer had vanished into the frozen countryside without a trace. Over the next 3 months, he would strike again and again. Entire families erased in the night. By the time it was over, 52 people were dead. This is the story of the beast of Ukraine. To understand how one man could murder 52 people across 7 years and remain free, you have to understand the country he moved through. Ukraine declared independence in 1991 as the Soviet Union collapsed, and what followed was not liberation but chaos. The economy contracted violently. Hyperinflation gutted savings. Poverty spread across the countryside while a shadow economy and organized crime filled the vacuum left by the state. Between 1988 and 1997, the official crime rate more than doubled. Police forces were underfunded, poorly trained, and in many cases deeply corrupt. Rural communities were largely left to fend for themselves. It was in this broken landscape where a string of murders could be written off as unrelated robberies, where entire families could disappear and no one connected the dots, that Anatoly Onoprienko found the perfect conditions to kill. Anatoly Yuryovich. Onoprienko was born on July 25, 1959, in the village of Lasky, Zhytomyr Oblast. His mother died when he was 3. His father, a violent alcoholic and war veteran, kept Anatoly's older brother Valentin at home, but sent the younger boy to a state orphanage. That abandonment marked him permanently. In the orphanage, he was bullied, began attacking other children with sharp objects, and developed a fascination with fire, sneaking into nearby forests to set flames. He later said the orphanage was indistinguishable from prison. After finishing school, he drifted: forestry college, the army, a maritime academy. He worked as a sailor, traveled widely, joined the Communist Party, and stole constantly without getting caught. By the mid-80s, he had married a woman named Yuriy, had a son called Dmytro, and worked as a firefighter. Then, in autumn 1989, he abandoned his family, took their savings, and disappeared. What followed was a spree of highway violence. Between June and August of 1989, Onoprienko and an accomplice named Serhiy Rogozin attacked travelers on remote roads in southern and central Ukraine. On June 14th, they shot a couple sleeping in their car near Dnipropetrovsk and burned the vehicle. A month later, another couple was killed in the same manner. Then, on August 16th, near Novorihorivka in Zaporizhia Oblast, they attacked a car carrying a family of 5: a father, his son, 2 spouses, and another passenger. The father resisted and was shot first. Everyone else was killed, including a young girl who was finished with a knife. The car was torched. Traffic police nearly intercepted them that night, but Onoprienko escaped. 9 people were dead, and no one knew who had done it. After the 1989 killings, Onoprienko left Ukraine entirely. He roamed across Europe, spending time in Germany and Austria, sometimes illegally, sometimes in prison, and at one point in a psychiatric hospital where he was beaten by other inmates. In May 1994, he was arrested at Kiev railway station for erratic behavior and committed to the Pavlov Psychiatric Hospital, where he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He escaped several times, was eventually discharged, and walked free. No one connected him to the 5-year-old highway murders. The system had failed completely. He returned in October 1995, and this time the killing was methodical. On October 5th, he murdered 2 men during a robbery in Malin. Weeks later, he killed a driver in Odessa. He acquired a sawn-off TOZ-34 shotgun, and from that point forward, his method became terrifyingly consistent. He would scout an isolated house on the edge of a village, break in at night, execute the adult male first with a shotgun blast, then the wife, then every child in the house. He looted what he could carry: money, jewelry, clothing, electronics, and set the building on fire. He killed not to hide his crimes, but because, as he later said, he was fond of fire. On Christmas Eve, 1995, he attacked the Zhytomyr family in the hamlet of Gamarnia, Zhytomyr Oblast. The father was a forestry teacher. The mother pleaded for her life because of her baby. He shot the parents and their 6-year-old son, then strangled their 3-month-old infant. He looted the home and burned it to the ground. 5 days later, he was in Bratkovychi, where he killed a man near the village club. On New Year's Eve, he massacred the Krichkivsky family, the couple and their twin daughters, in the attack that would later become the most harrowing symbol of the case. By mid-January, he struck Bratkovychi again, killing the 5-member Pilat family and 2 witnesses who crossed his path. 1 woman was sexually assaulted after being shot. 12 people in Bratkovychi alone, more, according to local accounts, than the village lost in the Second World War. Through January, February, and March of 1996, the murders continued at a relentless pace. On January 5th, he killed 2 couples and 3 strangers on the highways of Zaporizhia Oblast, stopping cars by pretending he needed help. On January 30th, he broke into a home in Fastiv, Lviv Oblast, and killed a 28-year-old nurse, her 2 young sons, and a male visitor. In February, he beat a mother and daughter to death with a hammer in Olevsk after their father and brother had been shot. Later that month, he murdered the Bodnarchuk family, parents and 2 daughters aged 7 and 8, killing the girls with an axe. A neighbor who came to investigate was shot and then mutilated. His final known attack came on March 22nd near Bratkovychi, where he killed the 4-member Novosad family and a relative, burned the house, and killed the family dog. For months, local police had treated the murders as isolated robbery cases. In at least one instance, a double killing was initially classified as an accident. It was only after the January 17th massacre in Bratkovychi, 7 dead in a single night, that investigators finally accepted they were hunting a serial killer. The Ministry of the Internal Affairs took direct control and created a special headquarters under Senior Officer Viktor Korol, the first such task force in Ukrainian law enforcement history. Thousands of police and interior troops were deployed across western Ukraine. roadblocks, armored vehicles, and curfews descended on rural communities. A photo-fit sketch based on a witness who glimpsed the killer in darkness was circulated nationally. And yet, he slipped through checkpoint after checkpoint. The investigation was not just slow, it was catastrophic. Several innocent men were arrested and released. In the most notorious case, 26-year-old mechanic Yuriy Mozola was detained in Lviv and tortured to death over 3 days by SBU officers and a prosecutor's representative after he refused to confess to crimes he did not commit. 6 officers were later convicted for his murder. Mozola is sometimes called the 53rd victim of the Onoprienko case, a man killed not by the beast, but by the very system meant to catch him. The break came from within the killer's own family. Onoprienko's half-brother Petro told Deputy Police Chief Serhiy Kryukov in Lviv Oblast that Anatoly had stayed with him, stored weapons in the house, including a 12-gauge hunting rifle matching a weapon used in one of the murders, and had become threatening when confronted. He had since moved in with a girlfriend, hairdresser Anna Kozak, in the town of Yavoriv. On April 14, 1996, a task force of more than 20 officers in unmarked cars surrounded the apartment. He opened the door expecting his girlfriend and was handcuffed without resistance. Inside the apartment, investigators found a sawn-off TOZ-34 shotgun, a pistol ballistically linked to the Odessa murder, and over 120 items of stolen property traced to crime scenes across the country, including a stereo from the burned Novosad home. Anna Kozak was wearing a ring taken from one of the victims. Onoprienko initially refused to speak to anyone below the rank of general, but when lead investigator Bogdan Teslia was brought in, confessions began to flow. First to the stolen shotgun, then to the 1989 highway killings, and finally to all 52 murders. He also named Serhiy Rogozin as his accomplice in the first series. During interrogations, Onoprienko offered a disturbing and contradictory set of explanations. He claimed voices had commanded him since childhood, that he had been chosen to carry out 3 series of murders. The first, he said, was for dying communism. The second was against neo-nationalism. A planned 3rd series, which he never carried out, was meant to prevent a plague of the 21st century and would require 360 souls. He described himself as a robot driven by a dark force, claiming he received permission to kill from another world. At other times, he gave far more earthly reasons: hatred of wealthier Ukrainians, resentment over his childhood abandonment, and a chilling rationale for killing children, so they would not be left as orphans. Forensic psychiatrists evaluated him in 1998 and found him legally sane. The trial opened on November 23, 1998, in the Palace of Justice in Zhytomyr. Onoprienko was held in an iron cage. Victims' relatives packed the courtroom, some shouting that he should be torn apart. The indictment alone took 3 days to read: 52 counts of murder plus robbery, rape, banditry, and weapons offenses. He largely refused to address the court. When asked to make a statement, he answered, "No, nothing." When asked his nationality, he replied, "None." He demanded a lawyer who was, in his words, not younger than 50, Jewish or half-Jewish, economically independent, and with international practice. The court rejected the request. Co-defendant Rogozin denied intent to kill and tried to minimize his role. On April 1, 1999, Judge Dmytro Lipsky spent roughly 12 hours reading out the verdict. Onoprienko was found guilty on all 52 counts and sentenced to death by shooting. He reacted with apparent indifference, raising his middle finger toward the judge and then tracing a cross on his own forehead. Rogozin received 13 years, but the sentence was never carried out. Ukraine had joined the Council of Europe in 1995 and committed to abolishing capital punishment. President Kuchma publicly sought an exception for Onoprienko, but the council refused. On December 30th, 1999, Ukraine's constitutional court declared the death penalty unconstitutional. His sentence was commuted to life without parole. He spent his remaining years in solitary confinement in Zhytomyr Prison No. 8, a maximum security facility known simply as the 8. Other prisoners refused to share a cell with him. Staff described him as disciplined. He read nearly the entire prison library, practiced calisthenics and meditation, and occasionally howled at night in a way that frightened neighboring inmates. He received no family visits. His brother Valentin publicly disowned him. His former wife Irina hid their son Dmytro in another city. In a rare interview shortly before the end, he said he still did not fully understand why he killed, called himself the greatest victim of his own actions, and said he accepted that the death penalty would be appropriate for him. On August 27, 2013, guards found him unconscious in cell 240. He was pronounced dead at 5:15 in the afternoon. Heart failure. He was 54 years old. He was buried at state expense in an undisclosed location. 52 lives taken. Entire families erased from villages that still bear the scars. A country in chaos that let a killer walk free for 7 years. And in his final words, the man who called himself a tool of dark forces admitted something far simpler. He never truly understood himself. What do you think drove Anatoly Onoprienko? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more cases from Eastern Europe that the world has forgotten, like this video and subscribe.